Welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Today, we're going to take a journey to one of my favorite places to go to. We're gonna go to Italy, and we're gonna start there with that journey. We're gonna bring that journey back to the United States, but more importantly, we're gonna go into what's it like to be part of a first generation to come from another country into America. I can tell it must be difficult. I'm going back to like The Godfather, and I'm seeing the olives, and the first generation. I'm seeing complete generations, and then I'm seeing them transition into America. And we can always look at movies and stuff and try to get into the mindset of the characters and what it may be like. But what if I can bring you somebody that really knows what that is like? Today on the show, we have a young lady who actually is a part of that first generation, mother, father, and her. Today on the show, all the way from the Boston area, the one, the only, the first generation herself, Miss Paula. I'm gonna get the last name right. Caligiuri. Did I get it right?
You nailed it. Yes.
Boom, boom. I'm good. Welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Before we get started, you're talking first generation with your parents. Let's get into your mom and dad's. Tell me about your mom and dad and what that was like for them coming over here.
Sure, sure. Well, my dad was 7 when he was immigrated, so he was a child.
Mhm.
My mom was the first in her family to be born in the U.S. Her three older siblings were all born in Italy. My mom and dad's families are from the same village, so that was pretty, and that's exactly as you described, that dusty kind of olive farming village in southern Italy. So it was quite different.
What was the name
And
of
of
the
all
village? What was the name of the village that they were from?
Sure. The name of the village was Cortale,
That sounds
but
that
it was
sounds
in the
beautiful.
toe of the boot, really skinniest part of the toe of the boot.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when they
Yeah.
would share with you stories, what was it? What were some of their stories when they came over here?
Yeah, I mean, for my dad, he didn't speak English. So he was a 7.5, 8-year-old kindergartner because he had to start all over again, right? He was an extremely bright man, but self-taught. I think in a different world, in a different life, he would have been an engineer.
Mhm.
But in this one, he never finished high school. Did really well, but did it, he's self-made.
Wow. So he just finished high school. When you was
Didn't
born,
finish high school.
he didn't finish high school?
Did not. No, he did not finish high school.
What was his
No, my
journey
mom
like?
did. My dad did not.
What was his journey like? Because I'm pretty sure when you're talking about the Italian experience, the man is a key focal
Yeah.
point in the stabilization of the family. What was that like for him? Not were opportunities really available for him?
You know what? My father was tenacious. He was scrappy. He was smart. He was able to get a job when jobs weren't available. He was extremely bright and good with his hands. He was great talking his way into situations. He got a job in a machine shop before he really knew what he was doing. He kind of talked his way into it. And it kind of worked from there. He was smart enough and plucky enough to just keep at it. And I think that's what he taught us, right? To just kind of keep with it and keep going. Eventually something's going to work out, but that idea of tenacity, I think that's what really helped him. He ended up working in General Motors as a machinist, as a repair person too.
What was it like for you growing up, knowing that they were first generation, so to speak?
Yeah, I think we were pretty bicultural. I'm the youngest of five. Um, Yeah. So, behind closed doors, we were an Italian family and loud and talking over each other and the whole bit. And then when we stepped out, it was a pretty typical suburb of Buffalo, New York.
Mhm.
Things were a little different. So we learned kind of to be two different ways. We became bicultural, I think many of us. My parents only spoke English. My dad served in World War II. So I mean, they were very proud Americans. They wanted us to sort of not connect much with our Italian heritage, which ironically, I ended up studying abroad and then living in Milan for 3 years. So my father's comment was, we spent an entire generation trying to get out of Italy and you're trying to get back in.
That is that's something I never really got a grip on. I saw such movies as when you hear the migration part, it's always relevant to The Godfather because that was my first exposure to Italian type lifestyle. Was but what I saw while watching the trilogy, it was almost poetic, so to speak. But my question is, why would you want to leave such a beautiful place? It didn't seem like it was infested with crime or drugs. And the resources are there, but did they ever share with you why they wanted to leave such a beautiful place that we in America we're trying to go over there to visit?
Yeah, well, it's Southern Italy's a little different than I think what most people, but at least back then, this was the late 20s. Um, it was very different, right? It was extremely poor. They were farmers. I mean, we there weren't easy roads anywhere. It was just they were very, very, very poor. And it was out of desperation and very typical of that era. Some paisans from the towns from the village immigrated to a part of Buffalo, and then they kind of called others back because they found work. And little by little, that would have been my grandfather's generation. Little by little, pretty much that half of the families in that little village in southern Italy relocated to Buffalo, New York, which I can't imagine two different climates,
Mhm.
you know, what their
So
experience must have been. But
you guys, when your culture came to the United States, you guys probably almost pretty much had some type of connections here. You knew people from your village that was already here. I take it.
my dad's family did, Andre, but my mom's didn't, which was, well, I mean, they knew each other, but in
Right.
terms of where they moved in Buffalo, my mom's family moved out to what was kind of a rural suburban area, suburbs now. What
Mhm.
was fascinating, like I grew up thinking that Italians ate, you know, Sunday roast with potatoes. I mean, that's what I grew up thinking. And actually, what I learned was that my grandmother and then my mom, got passed on grandmother to mother. They were in such a German English neighborhood that she learned how to be American from those neighbors.
Right.
And so this woman who never spoke a word of English kind of adopted all these very, things that her neighbors were doing. So we grew up with this like really not sure what was Italian and what wasn't. It wasn't until I went back to Italy that I realized, wait a minute, Italians don't do this.
What were some of the things that you yourself, as well as your family, because I know you guys are close, what were some of the disadvantages and things that was really hard for you guys to grasp once you came here to the United States?
Yeah. So I think I mean we were probably what would be considered maybe middle class, lower middle class, public schools, the whole bit. No, we all went to college, like all five of us went to college, but I asked my guidance counselor if I would get into Canisius College. She said yes. I applied to it. I never saw it. It was 20 minutes down the road. I mean, we just didn't know how to process that, which was fine. I mean, it was a wonderful education. All things were great. But it wasn't until I got to college that I first sensed and felt sort of our social status. Like I guess we it was the first time I was around people who were wealthy. It was the first time I was made to feel that my clothes weren't right or I wasn't, doing the right thing, carrying the right bag, like whatever those like stupid things are that the college kids care about. Um, I didn't fit in, and to this day, I mean, I've stayed connected and donated back to my university. But when they asked me what my biggest cultural challenge was, I say it was that. It was trying to adapt to being around affluence.
How did you adapt? What was the process that you took?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was, as you can imagine, an 18-year-old, you take it all very personally and you're not quite sure why you're not fitting in and this and that. I think I was fortunate in that, and like a lot of people are when they're trying to fit in, you find someone who sort of takes you under their wing and protects you in many ways. And I did. There was a few um, seniors. I was a freshman, seniors in that I was close with who were of that kind of wealthy set. And they made sure people just left me alone.
Mhm.
Still couldn't buy the clothes. I still couldn't afford them, but it was at least nobody was picking on me for them anymore. But I mean, I had some really horrible. I remember going to my senior ball. This was how I was a senior now, 21 years old. And I had this horrible person come up to me, and she was sitting at our table, and she was a date of somebody. She knew I didn't come for money or anything. It was probably obvious by what I was wearing. And she looked at me with this like snide remark, and she goes, "It's the fork on the left." Like,
Did you know what she was even talking about?
she did. She ended up like going to Columbia University and being very affluent. No, but I mean, she came from affluence and wanted to make sure I knew my place. And I wouldn't have it. It was anyhow.
How did
It
that
was it
affect
was that kind of stuff that kind of like kept creeping in. Um,
you? Said it
I'm
still
kind of for
affects you said it still affects you to this day. Give me an idea of what you mean that that particular shock is still resonating with you today.
Yeah, every now and then when I know, I mean, here I am, I'm 57 years old. I have a peach. Like I'm there. It's not, there's nothing in my background that says I should shrink around anyone. But for some reason, when I'm around folks who are just raised to own the places that they were in, to be confident, I sometimes shrink around that. And I've had to work really hard to kind of hold my own in those situations that I do now. But again, it took time. It took work.
Why do you think that, you have a PhD? What's your PhD in? What's your
Like
qualification?
psychology, right?
Okay. Okay, so that's why I'm getting
Organizational
ready.
psychology.
That's where I'm getting ready to go. How is that even possible that you're having a difficult time and
Right, right.
you're just now starting to understanding at 50 some years old? I mean, this is your field. Why is this still bugging you?
I mean, it's just like, human nature, how we're socialized. Humans are, you're socialized to have your own normative behaviors. And I was sort of socialized to be kind and nice and sweet and, to kind of know my place. And, it was what made our family, comfortable and easy to be around and happy and the whole bit. But sometimes you have to get a little more aggressive. And I in the world that I was in, with everybody's well educated, everybody's pretty wealthy, and all that, it was a little harder to get to stand up for myself. I learned how, but
Mhm.
it took time. It took time.
You wind up developing a company. And
Yeah.
I like the mission. And it's about public benefits, allowing people to have the skill sets. And more importantly, I like what you said, the knowledge. That was really deep. Why did you feel it was? Tell me the name of the business and why did you feel there was a need for the business? Um, and more importantly, how much of your experience was into the development of the business?
Wow. Andre, that business is 100% me. So, actually going back to that college story, uh, I ended up saving a lot of money to study abroad, and I went back to Italy to study abroad. And this was back when like really wealthy kids sent their parents. And you're going to keep hearing this theme, right? And
Mhm.
I wasn't at all. So it was the fall of 1987. The market crashed. The money I had saved was worth nothing. All the other wealthy kids were calling home and getting money. I called home, and my mom and dad said, "Honey, you've got two choices: get a job or come home. Those are your options."
Right.
So kind of, it's a kind of fairly long story short. Came home, came back, or I finished the semester. I got a job, stayed in Italy, finished the semester, but I had a really cool experience. I had an Italian boyfriend, visiting, my relatives down south. came back to Buffalo to finish out that junior year. And two professors said to me, Paula, what's wrong with you? You're not you. What's going on? And I said, I don't know. I'm just feeling different. I don't feel like myself anymore. And then they said, if that was so profound for you, they were psychologists, you should study that. So Andre, my grad school application said, I want to study what makes people effective living and working internationally, and I want to know how they change from deep cross-cultural experiences.
Hmm.
Fast forward, that's what I do. I spent the next, 30-ish years, 30 something, studying what people makes people effective living and working internationally and how they change from deep developmental experiences. So fast forward, sorry, told you this one was a little longer. Cultural agility has been the books I've written on, the research I've written on, but it's a skill that unfortunately starts to split. Everybody needs it professionally, but those who are wealthier and have more ability to travel and kind of get out more,
Hmm.
they tend to gain it faster. And that wasn't okay to me. I wanted to make sure it was a skill that everyone had access to and everyone could build. So as a public benefit corporation, we give away a lot of those development tools for free. So it began with, let's help everyone build cultural agility. And then it turned into, let's help people build other soft skills. Oh,
What are the advantages and disadvantages? You said this is a skill that everybody needs. Um,
yeah.
why do you say that?
Because it's the ability to go into a new situation. And humans, we're like wired to just, even if we're having fun, but when we go into a new and novel situation, our brain chemistry will start to shoot off the, like, this isn't cool, this isn't okay, this isn't okay, even if you're enjoying where you are.
Mhm.
So we do things like we cling to people that are familiar. We cling to things that are familiar. We look at situations and interpret them exactly as we would expect them to be. When you're culturally agile, you slow that process down. You assume positive intent. You get to know people. You're better at being in novelty, so you can move faster. Across careers, you can move faster. In networking events, you can get more from situations that other people are really reserved in. And that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to get people to to build that out so that they could enjoy the benefits as well.
This cannot be new research. This has to have been already implemented in the college system for study. Why haven't more people taken this and utilized it? Because to me, it would make sense to know firsthand other countries, other people, and to remove the fear-based factor that the media has a tendency to put on people. Why do you think that it hasn't? Why do you think there hasn't been a major focus on it? Because right now, like I just said, we're so culturally divided and we're afraid to really
Right.
understand who our neighbor is, especially now with so many nationalities in this country, even abroad. We are too afraid to know who our neighbors are for media propaganda. What's your thought on this?
God, you nailed it. So it is so critical now more than ever that we assume positive intent, get to know people. First of all, assume that we have something in common because almost everyone does. And the second your brains register something in common with someone, it flips on this like switch that enables you to relate to another person as a human. So I'm as opposed to just like writing them off as the other.
Mhm.
So one of the big things that we can teach is just how do you find commonality? Anything. Really, like I like your watch. I have the same watch, anything, really
Mhm.
anything. Um, and then the second thing is really assuming positive intent and putting yourself out there to get to know others. Why don't they teach it? I think we for years have just assumed it was about experience. So send students to study abroad or put everybody together in a multicultural classroom, and all you have to do is walk into a cafeteria and you see different groups, demographically different groups together. And it's not because they're xenophobic or racist or whatever. It's because it's where comfort is. When you're under pressure, our bodies and brains go to comfort. It's just the most natural thing in the world. And it's not right. right? But you have to kind of let your body and brain understand that comfort can also be somebody who doesn't look like you. And that's what we're able to teach, and that's what we're able to develop, and that's what we're able to train. Um, so it's worth it. It's the
How
hill
do
I'm
you
going to die on.
how do you implement the conquer and divide theory that was presented in the 17 and 1600 in this country, because this is a fear-based factor that's been indoctrinated into society of all cultures, and I still think that it still resonates to this day. Do you, as a professor at Northeastern University, do you implement old history theories into new uh, theory teaching, like what you're talking about now, culture understanding?
Yeah. I kind of I go even further back. I talk about evolutionary biology. I'm like, why? Humans, when they kind of wandered off and said, I'm going to do this on my own, they wandered away from their tribe. Guess what happened? They were eaten. Like humans could not evolve and live without being in community. I mean, that's just kind of natural. What's happened over time is that we start to see in-group and out-group versus like my community versus that other one must be risky and dangerous. So I kind of go from the evolutionary biology part to very quickly jumping into how do we see each other as not other, right? How do you reform the lines of the tribe, if you will, and see that you can connect and really get to know people who are very demographically different from you, and that's cool and that's exciting. That starts to be really beautiful. I
Mm.
had so many examples of that in my life that it became the the thing that I just so desperately want to help build.
Which
And it's
culture,
not easy.
which cultures have the least resistant factor, that they really aren't capable of transitioning to that way of thinking? Because you have different cultures that are here, but which one, with your studies and your program, which ones are having the most difficult times assimilating and trying to understand what's going on and what you're trying to do?
Yeah, I am asked that almost every single talk that I give, like who does it best? Who does it work? And at least my data, everything's coming out that there's individual difference. There's people in every culture, in every country, in every demographic situation that are great at this and others that aren't.
Mm.
It really fundamentally comes down to people's willingness to get out of their comfort zone, put themselves into a situation where you're with others that are just demographically different from you, and then take the time to get to know someone, find their similarity, assume positive intent, get to know who they are and their background, and start to reform the connection. It's again it can happen.
Mm.
Some people are just more resistant to it than others.
What has been your biggest crippling factor that has basically um, made it difficult to get your message across to people, and why?
Wow. In the past, I think I would have said I was probably too timid about putting it out there in a bigger way. Like I was just, not quite willing to go there. I'm willing to go there now. I have nothing to lose and everything to gain. And I think the message is something people need to hear. And it's been a journey on my own. And I remember the first time my father and one of my advisors at Penn State is a world-renowned um, Indian statistician who won what's equivalent to the Nobel Prize in statistics, if there was a Nobel Prize in statistics. My father, who never graduated high school, they were going to meet for the first time. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. It's going to be horrible. Like the researcher in me, like
Right.
everything I study should have said, Paula, like here's just two people. And I got such a lesson turned back on me when I watched CRO and my father connect with one another because it turned out they were the exact same age. If they were both still alive, they would both be 103. Um, they were they had like life experiences. They were generationally similar. So here's two guys worlds apart in so many ways. They ended up actually becoming friends so much so that CRL, this luminary, came to my dad's funeral.
Wow.
It was really a beautiful thing. But that was kind of like sort of like what stood in my way. Sometimes it was just me.
I was getting ready to ask that. Like, what were you afraid of when what did you think was going to happen when they met? Old school methods versus new school technology or something?
I don't know. I think I was, maybe I was still, this was probably when I was about 23 years old. So, it was a long time ago. I was probably still trying to understand what my place, and maybe I was still a little embarrassed about my background and my heritage. And I knew that was going to be a parent, and
Mhm.
it turns out, my parents are graceful and elegant and they're smart and they were all the things. And Ciara and his wife Bargaby, they were graceful and elegant and smart, and they were friendly and warm. And, like it was right. I got such a lesson in my own research right at that moment.
I'm pretty sure that you've had other encounters like that as part of your research with other couples or other cultures. But the question here is, how much of a factor is culture development into your new research? In other words, let's use your father for example. You knew he was going to come in with a set of values and his culture belief, and then you got the new way of thinking. When you're dealing with people that have such strong cultural intellect or knowledge and they stand firm on that, how difficult is it for them to think critical and open mind to think open minded with new information, because that's what your program is really about too, the knowledge. How willing are they, as far as your research, are they about accepting and trying to implement their fundamental ways of thinking versus this way of thinking?
Yeah, yeah, it's boy, we could talk for hours just on this topic because it's really coming down to so you and I could hold very different values, but yet we could still have the perspective taking to
Mhm.
see. So people who have a lot of perspective taking, who have this cultural agility, they're able to see like, here's my value, here's your value. You know what? There's I have to be able to see the positive side of your value
Mhm.
while not changing my own. It just give yours the positive, and also seeing the negative of my own
Mhm.
without, I don't have to change it, but just have to be willing to admit the negative. It's when we're able to do both of those two, you think about almost that like 2x2 type thing, it's too often it's my way's right, your way's wrong, and those are the two I'm going to hang on to. If we could just sort of move the needle a teeny bit in ways of saying, okay, here's some ways where there's some gray here. There's some ways that my way could be wrong, and there's some ways that your way could be right. I might still hold to my corner, and you hold to yours, but at least it gives us an opportunity to have a conversation. And then, what is it that we share? Some people utterly will refuse to let their brains go to either of those. And that's their loss. There's skills we can help build, but you can't change everyone, that's for sure.
We live in,
Values are a little, yeah, there's also it's like kind of more to it, but that's sort of, an example.
I'm pretty sure you deal with this in your field of study. Um, in America, we still are dealing with issues, especially now with social media, where we still are hearing impactful things about black and white slavery, reparations, um, the whole 9 yards. Why do you think, from what you're doing, and this is just hypothetical, how do we get past that? how do we get past this? We some say that it's ingrained, like what you was talking about, but let's just say it is ingrained. Let's just say that it is ingrained. 200 years, 400 years, whatever. How do we get past this and focus on the big picture, which is just humanity?
Yeah, it's exactly that, right? So it's what do we share? We share, love of our family, love of our friends. We share we share the desire to have, health and faith and whatever those it might be.
Mhm.
Start there, right? And then it's the assume positive intent, assume positive intent. That's it's like such a simple word, sentence to say, but so hard to do for so many people. Like just assume the other person's just doing the right thing. They might act or sound or be different. So I'll say to my folks who are working in different cultures, people might have very different reactions. You might be expecting some like bubbly, smiley person, and they're going to be really serious. Assume positive intent. You assume that their way of connecting is just has a different facial expression. And 98% of the time, you're going to be right. That people
Are
are.
you, Paul? Are you the only one that's in the U.S. that is doing this type of research, study, and development, and creating a program like this? Are you the only one that be doing that's doing this currently?
No, there's certainly other people who, everybody seems to have their niche. Some are talking about generations, some are talking about, race relations, some are talking about like different groups are doing different things. Um, I began out of cultural agility. So that's my phrase. I've written the books on cultural agility. That's kind of what I do, what I've known for. And that, culture really is layers, right? It's not just oh, I was raised in an Italian American household, therefore I am. It's not that at all. It is not that at all. I'm, 57 years old, so I have a generational culture. I have a, second generation culture. I have a, academic culture. I have a bit, like you just start to layer on all of the socializing agents that make you you.
Mhm.
Um, so I'll give you this like kind of quick example. One of the first things I do with my students, you talk about these kind of big, broad differences. You're American, you're, Chinese, you're German. I have them look up their own culture and look at the value structure. Are you formal? Are you informal? Are you egalitarian? Are you hierarchical? So all these different things, right?
Mhm.
And I have them look up their scores. So they take the test, they look at their scores, and then I have them default to their home country. It's are you exactly like your home country? Oh, well, let's talk about what makes you different from the default of your home country. So no one is their country just like that, or their race, or their nationality, or their generation. We're all different.
What's the common thread that we all carry that I think that should be the main focal point? Like when you're teaching this class, what is the common thread that all of us have that we need to first amplify? Matter of fact, instead of one, what are the three most important common threads that we have in order to really embark on understanding the reason that you're doing what you're doing?
Yeah. So I would say, survival, of course, is one. The second would be belonging. Like we want to feel as though we belong to a group. However, that group, we want to feel like that group likes us and respects us. And then think the third would be we want to feel competent. We want to feel like we're contributing in a way that we're leveraging our skills and talents to be, to give something back to that community that we identify in.
What are the age brackets that you're seeing more people taking an involvement in? What is the age bracket?
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of our clients are universities. So because of the client base, that age bracket tends to be kind of that 18 to 21-year-old. But we're having these conversations with corporate folks. Really anyone who if I'm talking to an 18-year-old or a 78-year-old, it's such a human thing to get, when we're in situations of novelty with people who are different from us, who react differently than we do. Our brains do certain things that shut us into looking for familiar. And if you can break that cycle, better things happen. You broaden your world.
What are some of the things that you're hearing from the younger generation as it relates to implementing this program?
Yeah, they're open to it in ways. I've been at this, I've been a professor, God, they're 30 years now. So I've been at this a long time. I think the new generation, they're cool. They kind of they're okay to learn these skills. Like they get it pretty quickly why this is important. Um, and they want to learn them. I think they're a little more, at least I'm seeing, maybe it's my students, but they're more open-minded, and receptive.
What are
And
they more afraid
there's
of?
no, I don't have to get up and convince them that this is a good thing. They get it.
But what are they afraid of? We all have fear factors. What are their fear factors, the younger generation?
Yeah, I mean, what I'm seeing is think about what they've been kind of socialized to believe. And again, I'm in a sort of an elite private institution, but they've had to compete really hard. They've been hyper scheduled. They're in this class and that class. Like they're again, this particular, group of students, they're having to compete for everything to get this grade and that grade and this grade and that grade. They're all wanting to do like everything at the highest level.
Mhm.
So I think a lot of them, I'd love to see them get a little more comfortable learning from failure and to, it's okay to not be, I hate the word perfect. They use perfect like we use okay,
Mhm.
like everything's perfect. It's not. World's not perfect. Life's not perfect. It's okay to not be perfect. So I think what I'm seeing their fear is doing it wrong and not succeeding.
When you're dealing with corporations, they have to bring the future into their corporations. What are you getting from them? And then the second part of that question is what are you getting from entrepreneurs that aren't a General Motors, that's not a Ford, that wants to come on? What kind of feedback are you getting from these individuals, and what are they trying to get from this program?
Yeah. So I think so if we're just kind of at the surface speaking about generations, I think one of the hallmarks of the youngest generation coming into the workforce now is that they seem to need a lot of like the gold stars and the, trophy for attendance and that kind of stuff. And I try to help people recast that. If you remember, they have been kind of hyper socialized to make sure they're doing well, and if they are, they get advanced to the next level. So I think that, we sort of need to redefine for them what success means,
Mhm.
and what achievement means. And that sometimes you are learning. You can take some risks and you can learn. And some of them do it. So really naturally they go into it, and others are really very,
How do you tell them what the difference is with success versus different generations? Like, how do you explain that to the new generation?
yeah, I think they can understand cultural differences, especially those who have had an internship. So for the first time in their lives, they're out of their generational culture. Because you remember, you think about it, you go back to your high school reunion, you're all the same age, right? So you kind of all you have sort of a culture that you understand each other's, how you've been socialized through the years. So does education, right? You're all about the same age, marching through education. The second you start working, now all of a sudden you see different generations, and they at first they sort of think of it as personal, like, oh, my manager's so this, or my coworker is so that. And
Mhm.
then they might, get a few of those experiences, and then they start to say, oh, they're, Gen X, or they're millennial, or they're whatever the group is, boomers or whatever.
Mhm.
And then we sort of break it down and say, you know what? There's some behaviors that are really, that's just kind of their style, and this one's yours. So let's do that like thing. What's right about yours? What's right about theirs? What's wrong about yours? What's wrong about like you kind of go through that, and then they see it.
How-
Most of us can.
Before we wrap up, what's the end game with this? I mean, like, who should be gravitating? What individuals, what corporations should be gravitating to this type of um, program that you have?
I would say, you know, we're in such an AI tech driven world right now that all the all the investment is going toward tech. I would I would sort of argue that if your organization is competing, if you create wealth around human to human trust, where
Hmm.
trust needs to be built, we are in such a diverse reality that you need people in the pipeline who know how to build trust human to human, and people who know how to build trust regardless of anyone's kind of demographic background, right? So building cultural agility in particular is really important if you create wealth off of human to human trust, and that's a lot of companies. That's a lot of companies out there.
Wow, that's crazy. How can the viewers reach out to you to get more information on all of the great things that you're doing to bring us closer to being human? Let's call it what it is.
Uh, so probably the easiest way is to go to skillify.com, and it's spelled in a funny way. We're helping cultures see eye to eye. So it's SKIILIFY. So skillify.com, and there you can click into take free assessments and free development tools, and things are available there.
Is it expensive for people to enroll or to try the program?
It's free. My guide, it's the tool is called My Guide.
Uh,
It's free for anyone to use.
what can
Anytime. The only thing you're going to be asked for is to put in your name and an email address.
what upon first trying it out, what should the person expect to see happen to them once they go and do this? Like, you know, are they gonna feel like, oh God, I didn't know that? Like, what would be their first experience?
Yeah, so they're the first, so they'll be asked to take some assessments, and they're pretty short. All in they might take about 10 minutes to do. But one will give them a kind of a snapshot of values of kind of 8 cultural values. The first aha that they're going to have is if they click on their home country and see that they're not their home country. It's like, if I'm not my home country, I shouldn't be stereotyped, nor should anyone else. So that's kind of a first aha, and then people play around with that, and you can learn about different cultures and all that. And then the second big aha is with the assessment is you get a readout of a snapshot of your 6 competencies, things like your tolerance of ambiguity, your resilience, your perspective taking, your humility, and you can kind of see where you are relative to others that have had this cross-cultural experience. And it gives you some tips on how to build each of those.
Well, it sounds like what I call a new awakening,
I would hope.
so to speak. I'm gonna ask you one more question.
Sure.
We how important is it to implement um like something a program like that ancestry.com into the work spreadsheet that you guys have? How important is knowing that part when providing the upload of information that is required with your company?
I love that. I love Ancestry. All my family did it. Basically we were told that our heritage or our DNA is everyone who's conquered Southern Italy. So we were Middle East, North African. We were we were Balkan. We were we were all those things, and of course Italian. But I think it's great because it's really hard to hold on to a national stereotype of one another when you see how mixed we all are.
Sounds like a winner. You know what, Paula, thank you so much for taking time to come up on the show. Make sure you guys reach out and what do you got to lose? It's free. Try it out. It can change your life. If anything, it can help you become, well, it can help us become closer to understanding the word humanity and moving forward with our life. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.